I could hear Mike Stallman.
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, the recording has begun.
Miriam is also on.
What, Steve?
Miriam Saldivar is on.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start. It's now 1 minute after 2. And I would like to call our May 14th, 2020 meeting to order. And with our usual practices, let's do the pledge to the American flag. And I will lead you in that. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
and
one nation,
nation
under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for
all. Thank you very, very much. Chancellor Head, I understand that the appropriate posting of the meeting has taken place.
Yes, it's been certified in accordance with the law.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Head. Dr. Head, do we have any introductions today or special guests or recognitions that you would like to make?
This is kind of unusual, but we reconvene in person. We'll thank them in person, but I want to let you know that 4 of our current faculty senate members are rolling off as faculty senate president. Roger Chambers from Kingwood, from University Park, and Devithia Guillory from North Harris, Donna Willingham from Tomball. So I want to thank them for they've been great. And we'll bring them back in when we reconvene and thank them. We also have incoming faculty presidents. From Kingwood is Jenny Chiotti. She is the professor of criminal justice. Kimberly Ball, who is the professor of history from North Harris. Ginger Frey is professor of English at Tomball. And Sean Stewart is the professor of speech at University Park. So I wanted to thank the departing faculty senate presidents and welcome the new ones. And again, we will put faces to names meetings. We also have a Jack Kent Cook Foundation Award, and these are nationwide scholarships. And I want to let you know we have a student who's receiving it. And Link, can you put that? Yeah, put it. There we go. So this is Umberto Costa. Think about this. This is a $40,000 scholarship. There's only 50 given every year. And, you know, we've been one of our students has been a regular award winner for a number of years. This is $40,000 annually for 3 years to transfer and finish their bachelor's degree, and then the opportunity to work on a master's. Umberto is from Sci-Fair. He's majoring in biomedical engineering. The goal is to transfer to either Johns Hopkins or Cornell or Texas A&M. So if you would join me in congratulating Umberto. This is a really fine award for him. So
that sure is. Thank you so much for that. So anything else, Dr. Head?
That's all. Sorry.
No problem. Just wanted to make sure, not rushing you. Helen, do we have anyone wishing to make public comments to the board this afternoon?
Chair Smith, we did not have anybody sign up for today's meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. We have 2 sets of minutes that we need to approve, and I will take the minutes of March 5, 2020 workshop and regular meeting of the Board of Trustees first. I have a motion and a second.
motion,
second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second that we adopt the minutes of our March 5, 2020. Any questions? If not, those in favor by the usual sign of aye.
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 Opposed? The motion passed unanimously. The second minutes that we need to approve is our special meeting of April 9, 2020. May I have a motion and second, please?
So move.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and properly second that we adopt the April 9th meeting minutes. Are there any questions? If not, all of those in favor, vote by the usual sign of aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much. Mr. Chancellor, we're back with you with special reports and announcements.
So, board, I'm going to give some updates, and we'll have the consent agenda, and then Jennifer is going to finish with a financial report and a review of the budget again, kind of where we are with everything. But so at the moment, we are completing this semester that we moved the end date back. So we've got 2 more weeks, roughly 2 more weeks of that, May the 30th. And as of today, we still have 70,416 students enrolled. 70,416. Drops this year have actually been less than they were the previous year, which is amazing given everything that's going on. So our next step is to reopen the campuses on June 1. This is the workforce students need to finish their face-to-face classes. This is a very planned, a very small opening so that we can finish the workforce classes and bring a number of employees back. We have a few coming in starting May the 18th just to prepare the campus, but we're not fully opening. We do not want all employees back. So this summer we will continue to be online. Some workforce classes will be offered. We're offering about 3,000 classes altogether, something like that. And we have summer enrollment right now is down 6.5%. That's better. Every week that gets better. So we'll see. We're hoping to be around -5 or below, but we'll see what happens there. Fall enrollment's the key, and that's right now, depends on which report you look at. So there's 2 different reports we have. One is -35 if you look at it from now to the time we start, 103 days. If you look at it and compare it from the previous year, from the days we registered, we're -16%. So we'll just be monitoring that, and we'll give you regular updates on that. It just depends on how you look at it. We started fall registration 2 weeks later. We moved that back. So it's not comparing apples to apples right now. But our major focus will be the fall registration. That's what's really, really important to us. Let's talk to you a minute about we'll talk more about this in our next meeting on May the 28th about return to building protocols and the work from home protocols. We've got about 250, give or take, employees coming back in to get us started. And we're doing this very gradually. We'll give you a lot more detail because we have it. I've sent you some emails, but we have sanitation going on. We have social distancing planned. We have masks. We have PPE, you name it. We're following CDC guidelines, the governor's guidelines, and anybody else that has a guideline. We're taking a look at all that. We'll be very, very careful with this. We understand what the implications are. We've got a couple of different committees working on this. Mario's leading, working with the presidents and the vice chancellors to make sure that all the buildings are opened correctly and that we know what to do if somebody we want people to be wearing masks. We want to make sure their temperatures are okay. We know what to do if somebody's tested positive. And right now we've had a total of 2, maybe 3 employees that have tested positive and about 27 students, something like that. So we want to be really careful. We know what the implications are. So when we do come back, we'll have classes limited, and we've got another group working on what that looks like for the fall. So I think that's the reason I've been saying it. When we meet in May, we'll have a lot more information about enrollments and budgets and everything connected with that. We also we'll come back to you with the work from home guidelines, and keep in mind that we have 2,500 full-time employees, And so the faculty, it's really about the staff and some of the administrators, professional staff, support staff, and administrators who are going to handle that. And so every college president and vice chancellors, we submitted plans. They were looking at plans. We're trying to make sure it all makes sense. Link Elander has been setting up drop off or pickup areas for the computers. We have a number of people that want to work from home, and we want as many people that can and makes sense to work from home. So we'll update you on May, because we're in the middle of all that right now. I mentioned the fall semester enrollment, but Link, can you go to the next slide? Lord, I wanted to show you how we're carving this up. The next one after that, Link. I don't know whether you can see this or not, but this is generally the breakdown. So you can see for in-person is about 50%, hybrid, which is they're going to meet sometimes and meet online sometimes, is about 25%. And then the face-to-face is about 25. And so basically about 75% of our courses we can convert pretty easily. We're going to be ready to convert everything to online if we need to. Right now, and I'm asked this question a lot, what are we going to do for the fall? We will see what happens with the virus, whether or not the severity of it. Sometime I thought probably around July 1, we'll have a little better idea about where we stand with everything. We're going to be ready, though, to move everything online if we need to. We will do that if we need to. And I just want to point out here that if you're taking a look at these numbers, University Park, the numbers are a little skewed from everybody else. That's because University Park, to get to their classrooms, you have to go on the elevators. And we still haven't worked that out yet. So that's just a logistical problem that we have. So that makes sense. The next time I show you this, it could change because it just depends. We have funds set aside if we grow. And we think, despite what the enrollments look like, I personally think that we're going to have a surge of enrollment sometime in June after the students finish. People realize it's just they're going to make decisions about whether or not they want to go back off to college someplace. So we'll see. I just want to say I'm cautiously optimistic about that and trying to be realistic. We're planning for the worst case scenario if that happens and hoping for the best. Let's go to the next slide, Link. So let me give you a couple of quick updates on the CARES grant, or the stimulus. So we have received a total of 30 million from the two pieces to the CARES Act. The first one, and then for the second one was for being a Hispanic serving institution. And out of that, we have to give 50% to the students, roughly. We have the second one we had a little more discretion with, but we decided to give half of that to students and then cover some of our costs for the other half. So roughly there's 15 million. We have to date, awarded 11,700 students who are on Pell. We awarded them money. We have another, we think we're going to be awarding another 5,000 employees. Students, sorry, not employees, students. We've had about 7,200 or 7,300 additional applications that we're going to give this money to, but some of those are not eligible. The Department of Education has laid out what the criteria is. For example, you have to be making satisfactory progress. You have to be a U.S. citizen. They've laid out several different criteria for us, and we're going back and cleaning that up. We think that before it's over with, this spring, we'll give out about 16 or 17,000 students will be receiving money from us for about 8 million. Then we will award more money during the summer, and then we'll award more money during the fall. So again, there'll be a total of about $15 million that will be awarded to students. So, and I just don't know whether we're going to receive any more money or not. I'm getting conflicting reports over that, so we'll see. On the foundation, I wanted to let you know, thanks to Nicole Robinson Gauthier and Kyle Scott, the Star Gala, you may not, I mean, we had so much going on, you may not have been aware of this, but we canceled the gala, of course, but we had an anonymous donor that gave us $1 million to cover the cost, $1 million. And then we had an online auction. raised $43,000. And then we had sponsorships where they just gave us the money and said, okay, because of the circumstances, 145,000. So altogether, we raised 1.2 million, which is the most money we've ever raised in the foundation, by the way. So Nicole does a great job of maintaining these relationships with our donors and just kind of putting everything together and thinking everything through. And I don't know whether she's on the line or not, but the foundation board recognizes what she's been doing. And of all the things we've had going on, that's a real positive. So yes.
I have a question, and you may have answered this already. Said that through donations, et cetera, we received $1.2 million from donors this year.
Right.
How does that compare with what we typically raised? Do you remember?
Yeah, well, I do. Normally, if we raise $500,000, I think we've done well. If we clear $500,000, that's after the money and the expenses. So there are no expenses with this year's gala. So
Kind of a blessing. Okay, good.
right.
Okay, thank you. Great job.
Yeah. So the last thing, well, I have two things. One is the graduation. And if you can see, so I tell you, this is a year of oddities. So we have a record-breaking number of students graduating. We are graduating 8,863 with a degree or a certificate. That's a 6% increase over last year. And again, it just kind of shows you how well we were doing before the virus hit. And the fact that our students are hanging in there really is a tribute to, for the most part, I think it's for our faculty. They're the ones encouraging the students to stick it out, and they're working with the students. And, we've got a lot of people working with the students, but the faculty are making this happen. I want to thank them. So each campus is hosting a virtual graduation ceremony as we celebrate the accomplishments. And so we're sharing on social media, we're running ads, the community impact, the Houston Chronicle, and we're trying to recognize them however we can. We'll be providing diplomas to them. This is a very odd year, but we decided that it's not worth the risk to have them all in the same place. It's just not. So, and don't keep in mind also that we have GED students and ESL students, so we'll be working on that also. That's a separate graduation. The last thing I have on my list is the standard employee rating, and I'm going to let Jennifer talk about that at the end. She's going to include that, but I was very, very pleased with this. In the middle of all this, we received a AAA rating, and I sent the note out, but that's really a tribute. That's our board policy and our efficiencies and our planning and kind of our forward thinking, but I'll let Jennifer go into more detail about that. So that wraps up my my part, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Okay, board members, do you have any items that you would like to report on?
Chairman Smith, may I? This is Miriam.
Hey, Miriam.
Hey, I just want to use this time to kind of thank all the Lone Star College administration, staff, professors, cleaning crew, especially the police officers, our Lone Star College police force, for working through this pandemic and for always providing the achievement of students first. So I want to thank everybody for that.
Well, I know they are very appreciative of that, Miriam, and I fully agree with you.
Thank you, sir.
Who was that? Anyone else? Ted, I have a question that I forgot to ask you. Dr. Head?
Yes, sir.
You mentioned earlier that we had 70,416 students currently enrolled after the pandemic happened.
Right.
And now that 70,000 that's only credit and workforce students, right?
Those are just credit students, right? We have other students. We probably have another 5,000 or so non-credit students that are still enrolled, workforce students primarily.
Yeah, if they add all of our students up, everyone that's enrolled, any idea what those numbers are? If you don't know, that's okay at this point.
Right now it's about 75,000. During the long-term, it was a little over 90,000 if you take a look at it throughout the semester.
Right, okay. All right, that's what I was wondering. That's what I was thinking. It was around 90,000 normally. Okay. Okay, any other comments, board members?
Yes, sir, Mike Sullivan.
Yes, go ahead, Mike.
I just want to compliment the administration and Dr. Head on their outreach. I know that he talked about increasing the advertising during this downturn to drive more interest and attention to the fact that we're open and will be open for summer and fall. Steve, I can't log in to my computer without a pop-up ad from Lone Star College. So I cannot open up the Humble or Kingwood newspaper without seeing a full page ad from Lone Star College. So it's working. And I also noticed yesterday, the big billboard back up on Beltway 8 headed east right before JFK. So
Okay.
no doubt you're getting the word out just as you said you would. So I'm sorry I was muted a moment ago, but if we could enter a synopsis of that comment, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. I know they're working hard because we talk. You can ask Kyle Scott about that. We talk every day about what we're doing to get the word out and make sure that people know that we're in business and we're willing to help. So,
and Steve, if I may, we all have different and varying degrees of involvement in social media. I try to comment when I see those posts. I commented yesterday on the truck driving program. I've commented on the aviation program. The post about mini mesters, I told people that that's how I graduated in 2 years with my associates. And, if we could chime in a little bit when we do run across it, it might help.
okay.
Lend some credibility. So just a suggestion, friendly suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, you're welcome. And also, Steve, I want to mention, you mentioned Kyle's name. I don't remember now what news program he was on, but he was interviewed by a local TV station. And I thought he did a real credible job of selling
Good.
the Lone Star programs to the general audience.
Good.
So you could pass those comments along to Kyle, would appreciate it.
I will. Thank you.
Steve, I have a question. This is Ken Lloyd.
Yes, Ken.
You said we have like 75 students that are still enrolled, or we compared to the 90,000 that we were at previously?
70. Right now, we've got 70,000 credit students enrolled.
Okay. So and it was 90,000. You mentioned something about.
Well, that was credit and non-credit, but Trustee Lloyd, we normally have about 10% of our students drop out during the course of the year.
Okay. So, we know who these students are. We've identified them, etc.
Yes, we do. We know who they are. Actually,
Sorry.
since you brought that up, I have Jennifer's going to talk a little bit about this. We had a number of students drop after March the 13th because of the virus, and we know that, and we have money in the budget. We are asking them to let us know if they dropped specifically because of the virus, because we have funds to give them their money back. We've had so many applications on that, but we have $1 million set aside to refund their tuition and fees.
Okay. You talked about testing students. Are we set up to test these students that will possibly be coming back? Or are we assuming that they're going to test themselves or what?
When you say testing, you mean new students that are coming in?
Yes, and any student returning, I guess it's.
Well, so we got a couple of things going on. The students that are coming back, I mean, we don't have to retest that way. We have workforce programs that we, starting June 1, where the workforce students are coming back to finish the work that they started this spring.
Okay.
So that's number one. Number two, on the students that are coming in from the high schools, we're running a little behind, although I can't quite tell yet, and not a lot. We just haven't had that many high school students registering right now because they technically haven't even graduated from high school yet. But a lot of the tests have been waived, right? So in other words, they don't have to go through some of the testing that they did. So we're working with the ISDs to get those students in,
Okay.
talking about how we can make this transition for them. I mean, we've got a number of different challenges. One is the technology, of course, but then the other one is these students were so disrupted, their lives were disrupted, and we know that. So we're going to be, we've got some waivers from the coordinating board to let those students in and to place them based on high school grades, not the testing that we would normally do. I'll give some more updates on that when we get a little more information on that.
What I was asking is from a virus standpoint, are we testing students that are returning?
Sorry.
You have,
No, we're not yet. And we have, when we come back, that's a good question. So we've got returning to building. We are not testing the students. We are not testing the students. And we're going to be, this is one of the touchy issues that we have about when we return. We're going to be relying on them for self-reporting. And no, we will have when you say testing, our plans are to have thermometers available when the students come in. We're actually looking at a couple of different technologies right now, or when students come back in mass. For example, scanners where they could, Mario has been tracking down to see what that is. I mean, I've seen in the airports and on Amazon and how they're using that. Where you walk by, it measures your temperature, and then it sends something on your iPhone, and then you can show either you're red or green. So we are taking a look at different technologies over how we can monitor that. In the meantime, we're going to have check-ins at each of the entrances. We're hiring people to do the check-in for us so that we have to use our own employees. It's I'll tell you what, we've got some what we call protocols, and I'll get those to all the board members so you can see what we're doing. Good question. Does that help?
yeah, that helped. The other question is, there's a lot of publication and articles talking about there's going to be a career switch in students come in the fall. And I'm just wondering, where are we with respect to what are our expectations on the career shift in students?
Well, first of all, we're ordering 6,000 computers, and that's part of the career shift because we think a lot of this is going to be technology driven. And so, we're still talking to, and we know that, I've talked to a couple of other board members about this. We know that in the future, our economy is going to be technology driven. Now, how that fits in with all the jobs that are going on, for workforce, we had already been seeing that shift. We've already been seeing that. So nearly all of our workforce programs have a high level of technology involvement with it. But the traditional academic courses they've been pretty traditional. So we're already seeing that piece of it. Jennifer Mott and I have been talking to the bookstore again. And so we increasingly are talking to them about online and digital books that, we talked about earlier this year with the board. Moving toward digital books. And so I think you're going to see that piece of it too. So when you talk about careers though, we haven't, outside of what we were doing and us knowing that change is coming, I think what you're going to do is see us in any new programs that they're going to be technology driven, if that answers your question.
Yeah, I just need to know, are we in a position to list what would be considered those hot jobs? Because the parents are asking me dealing with 5,000 K through 12.
Yes, we are. And I'll get you the jobs that we have right now that are given to us by the state and but I will tell you that most of them, interestingly enough, they're very traditional right now. We're not seeing the sudden change. I'll give you the list I'll send that to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Yes, this is Trustee Pearson. I would just like to make a comment. And Steve, I appreciate, that you've given us such a great outlook on Lone Star. And I know that, community colleges are doing better than the four-year universities. But what has been happening this week just gives me concern because this week, Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner announced a 3,000 city employee furlough, plus terminating, plus layoffs.
Right.
Harris County is following suit with its proposed budget cuts, at least 2% per department.
Right.
Now, as a trustee, I feel compelled to continue my discussion for the need for a RIF plan. I appreciate what you have sent me. You've obliged me by sending me some, you sent me some good thoughts. I'm looking at that. But I want to alert, the board, we're leaders. And as the governing board of Lone Star College, trying to determine how to deal with employees during COVID-19 pandemic, this is difficult. And, in times like this, employees want their leaders to be honest. They want us to be transparent about the economic challenges the college is facing, or without sugarcoating anything. In other words, don't hide the realities of how the college is being impacted and possibly more severe impacts of COVID-19. Now, scientists are saying that Texas, now we can only hope for the best. Texas will be, the pandemic will hit us hard in August. Don't know how true that is, but this is science. Now, understand that COVID-19 is an equal opportunity pandemic. It doesn't discriminate on the basis of who you are. So my thing is, regardless of whether a huge budget deficit is imminent, Lone Star needs to be ready for the possibility of a reduction in force. It has to be ready for it. We can't afford, I know we have a policy, but a policy is different from a plan. Your plan executes your policy. So we can't afford, we have to be ahead of the game. We can't afford to not have a plan. We have to be prepared. Lone Star, must create a plan and put it out in the open. I know we have a policy, but no plan. And we have to implement the policy. People need to know. The biggest choice of selection criteria to determine who's going to be laid off is going to be the most critical decision made in the course of a RIF. And that concerns me because I want to make sure that fairness and equity are the basic part of a RIF policy. Also, we don't want to be caught, as a board. We have to make sure that it's discriminatory neutral or we're going to be sued. It's just that simple. So we're dealing with people and we're dealing with people, it's important to take care of because, they've taken care of us. Like you say, the faculty, staff, they've taken care of us and they've taken care of the students and the community. But we need to do the right thing. And we need to have a RIF plan in place. Just that simple. Thank you for hearing me out.
Let him go in and he's going to go in and respond to that, Ernestine. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree. That's what we're going to talk about on May the 28th, by the way.
Okay.
And the key for us is this fall enrollment. I mean, I keep going back to that, but the fall enrollment will determine what our finances look like. Jennifer's going to give you an update, but we know for this current year, we're okay. And I agree. I mean, several of you sent me notes and I saw what the mayor did and I see what's happening. I saw the unemployment numbers today and I see it in Texas. And we're hoping that it doesn't get worse, but it could easily, and we know that. So on May, we were going to go through some of the options and the way we're looking at things. And I think that's where we're going to a lot more detail about this.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate that.
That's May the 28th, by the way.
Correct. Okay. If there are no other questions.
Chairman, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman, this is Art Murillo.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to just quickly make a couple of comments. First of all, I do miss everyone. And one of the things I enjoy about attending our board meetings, trustee meetings, is listening to the good news, listening to the uplifting messages of the people who received scholarships, awards, our faculty, our staff, everyone. I mean, it's just incredibly positive, uplifting. So I just want to bring that up because I think we all, in light of the circumstances and the conditions going on, there's staff working hard. As I always mention, I have a senior in high school, a COVID-19 graduate, so he hates the attention already because everybody keeps telling him, how he misses prom and all that. But I have a on-the-ground voice or ear from his friends and other people about how they're taking on for this challenge and how they're preparing for next year. And I mentioned this to Dr. Head early on and staff, and I'd be glad to report that it's been very positive. He and his friends do get responses quickly from staff, and a lot of them, as we expected, did feel a little anxious, a little nervous about what they're going to do. Most of them was, that when they say, I don't know what I want to do. or I don't know how many. So the point that I want to make about our excellent staff and faculty is that sometimes they just need to talk to somebody, or sometimes just need a question answered. And in fact, I've talked to a couple of individuals who didn't go to school last year, and they somehow all this reminded them, give them a chance to reconsider their career and wanted to go back to college when they didn't go last year. And I'm talking about actually a neighbor of mine here, next door neighbor. So I'm not, all that to say that let's not forget what our objective is, our mission, our purpose, and all, although we don't get to thank you, staff and teachers and everyone who's involved, and our fellow trustees, and of course Dr. Head, we're in the middle of probably some unprecedented thing in history, right? We all know that. I don't have to say that, but what we do now is going to have an impact years from now, and this involves the life of people like my own son, who's graduating this year. So just keep it up, and I know that we don't know yet. I know we have a lot of unknown, a lot of questions like everybody else does, and but I just wanted to also give some kudos to everyone. I concur with the messages that Miriam and Steve and Alton mentioned, the chairman mentioned, as far as the staff and faculty. So thanks again. That's it.
All right, one thing you can do is tell your son to bring most of his high school classmates with him to Lone Star.
That's what we're doing. That's what we're working on.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Sullivan.
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Since we're talking about budgets and finances and reduction in force and a number of other things related to that, I do want to, because we have close to 200 people on this watching us and listening to us right now, and I want to assure those people listening, as well as our employees and faculty, that it's my opinion that Lone Star College is on very sound, solid financial footing. The trustees that came to the board before my service did an extraordinary job building up a 16-17% reserve, which when I tell people, my colleagues in other government offices, in elected officials, they're stunned. And they wish they had a 5% reserve. So to the administration and Steve Head and your team, I want to say thank you for being diligent in working with the board and in increasing and building the reserves. It also needs to be noted that we received $8 million from the feds, from the CARES Act. We have more money coming. We're in pretty darn good shape. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't take our eye off the ball, but I just don't want anyone to be alarmed. We can be smart. Let's make informed decisions and trust our administration to bring us the right information, and then we can act on it accordingly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, and I tell you, Mike, I think Jennifer will cover that later on, based upon how financially sound we are. And so those comments were very appropriate. Just moving right along. I don't know of any committee reports. Yes, who?
All right.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, do you mind?
Oh, not at all.
Thank you so much.
I see you.
I just want to echo both Miriam and Mike Sullivan. Mike, thank you so much for recognizing the hard work and effort of those who came before you. At times, the decision to try to achieve a healthy reserve balance was not a popular decision, but I certainly don't regret that that's the path that we took. And Miriam, your time spent thanking all the employees is time very well spent. I think we need to recognize just how challenging this has been. If you were already teaching online, it was probably not a particularly difficult transition. But if you had never done that before, depending on where you are in your career and how technology friendly you are in your everyday life, it could be a daunting and anxiety provoking task. I get to hear some stories around the dinner table, and I'm meeting the same challenges with my own team at where I work. For example, someone was stressed about why we couldn't obtain a particular electronic peripheral for her to facilitate more efficient working from home. I had a conversation with her about just how hard it is to find white sewing thread. Something that you would not even think about being a problem. Americans are learning that we have been spoiled. Disruptions in our supply chain are really upsetting our daily lives and complicating our ability to work. And so I just want to make sure that all of our employees, every single level, understand and know that we appreciate the challenges that they've faced in incorporating this new normal into their lives and realizing how very much this pandemic affects every aspect of their lives. That's all.
Trustee Good, those are outstanding comments that you've made. And I was going to hold off on making a comment, but I'm going to go ahead and mention it now. I received a call from a friend in New York about our reserves. When they were looking at our credit rating, before they looked at it, their intent was to downgrade our credit rating. But after they saw our financial position, they maintained that particular credit rating. And I think that's a great tribute, tribute, to our finance organization and also the leadership under Dr. Head for making sure that we are in a real good financial position. And I pray and hope that we maintain that same momentum. Okay, let's move on to the.
Let me say this. Experiencing these difficult times, there are 40 million people that were already in the situation before this happened. And we got to remember that we got a lot of people that are suffering, and this is not new to a lot of those people. And that number is probably around 40 million people that were already in this situation before we got into it.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to the consent agenda. And if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, there are 8 items on the consent agenda for this meeting. Are there any items that you would like to see consider separately?
You're talking about the 8 items?
Seven, I believe.
Okay.
Well, let's say it's action item 1, 2, 3. It was 7 initially. Okay. 1 was added. That revised it went out, I think, yesterday or the day before. Initially, it was 7, but the corrected one, there are 8 items.
Yeah, Trustee Smith, this is Helen. It went out on Monday morning before we posted officially, so we could comply with the Open Meetings Act law.
Okay.
Thank you, Helen. You're great job. There are 8 items. So are there any that you would like to see considered separate?
Yes, item 5. And then item 6.
Okay. Making a note so I don't make a mistake. Okay, so items 5 and item 6 will be considered separately. If there are no others, I would like to have a motion to adopt action items 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second. That's
Second.
those items. I call for a vote. Yes. Are there any questions? If not, all of those in favor, vote by the usual sign on those 6 items.
Aye. Be it.
Any
Aye.
opposed? None opposed, so thank you. Okay, we will now consider action item 5. So Steve, who's going to speak to action item 5?
Do you want a motion?
Dr.
Well, yeah, thank you. A motion to consider motion and a second to consider item 5. Thank you.
So moved.
Sullivan, second.
Okay, it's been moved and properly second that we consider item 5. So, any comments?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, the Brain Fuse Inc. I'm just curious as to the process. We went through the process of choosing that particular organization, and if you go and you look up the profile on it, it's my concern is it's not registered by the Better Business Bureau, and there seem to be a lot of other choices that we possibly could have considered. So I'm just curious as to why we chose Brain Fuse.
Jennifer Mott would talk about the process. Which?
Yep. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Mine is telling me I'm still muted. Yeah, so just like our typical procurement process that we follow, we had an RFP number 707 out, and we had 3 proposers. So I believe you also have the tabulations that show how all of the proposers scored. Everyone initially goes through an evaluation of their proposal, and there were 5 proposals. And then from those 5, 3 proposals scored above a 70. So those 3 moved on to presentations. And so then those 3 gave presentations, and then a second round of scoring was done based on the presentation. And then the final step is we take an average of the 2 scoring, the scoring of the proposal and then a scoring of the presentation. So that it's labeled the 50-50 evaluation tabulation. So that shows how the 3 firms that had given a presentation scored with respect to pricing, qualifications, their quality of services, past performance. And that's what then results in sort of the final score. So that's where Brain Fuse did score the highest.
They scored the highest.
What's resulted in that? Yes, they scored the highest. So that has resulted. That's the process that resulted in their selection and in their recommendation.
So we're saying that we're not concerned about how they're ranked by the BBB. Okay, that's what I needed to know. All right.
Okay, if there are any other questions? If not, who's that?
No questions.
Okay, good, thank you. At this point in time, we need to vote on this. All those in favor of adopting action item 5, vote by the usual sign.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
No.
Okay, who are the 2 noes?
Trustee Pierce.
Okay. And Ken, okay, thank you. Okay, we will now consider action item 6. I need a motion and a second to consider that particular item.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Been moved and properly second that we consider action item 6. Questions?
Okay, that was the Apex. Is that what it's called? NGI Capital, Apex.
It's action item 6.
Yeah.
That's contract.
Is Apex a part of NGI? Which one did we choose based on NGI or based on Apex IT?
On that one, it is the company's NGI Capital doing business as Apex IT.
Apex is a subsidiary of NGI, right?
I believe so, yes. So it's the contract is with NGI Capital doing business as Apex IT.
So are we actually paying Apex or NGI? And Apex is the one that's located in New Mexico, and NGI is their corporate in New York, is what I'm assuming.
Sir, this is Link. So on the CRM bid, it's bid as two parts in one bid. So one part of it is the integrator, and then the other part is the company. So the integrator in this case is Apex IT. They're handled by NGI Capital as far as the company that oversees them, their parent company.
So when we break down this disbursement, this money is going to 5 years, 2.5 million. That's 500,000 going to Apex, or does it go to NGI?
First off, it's a negotiate to execute. There's not a final deal finalized yet. We're requesting to negotiate with management, Oracle, and then in this case, Apex IT, which is part of the Salesforce CRM product. So this allows us to begin the negotiation to finalize the price for the overall contract.
Okay, because if you go and you look up and you do a search on Apex, the maximum revenue stream per year for that organization is $1 million, and I'm just trying to figure out and understand it. But I mean, you and I can talk offline about this.
Okay, any other questions?
That's it.
All those in favor of our action item 6, vote by the usual sign of aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
And one abstain.
All right, thank you. We will now move on to the financial report.
So Vice Chair, to go through the financial report and then go through the updates on where we are with our finances right now, what it looks like with the virus impact.
Okay, hi everyone. Yeah, so I mean, the reports are basically one and the same. I mean, included in your agenda are the financial statements themselves, the income statement and the balance sheet that I typically present. But then to give context to those financial statements is where I have kind of our current state of our finances. If we could go to the first slide. Okay, so I have followed roughly the same format that I did at the last board meeting to show how pandemic is affecting our finances and our budget. So first here, just looking at this year and this summer, for this fiscal year right now, we are looking at an impact of 19.6 million. And so here you can see the full list of all that's included there. The primary changes from last month is first, a very positive movement in summer enrollment. If you remember last month when I presented this, we were looking at the time at reports of a 40% decline in summer enrollment. On Monday, when I updated this, we were at a 7.3% decline. So that's definitely moving in the right direction. I think as of this morning, it was 6.5%. So that's where we're looking at right now at revenue loss of about 1.5 million for the summer enrollment decline. Below that, I mean, is where Dr. Head had mentioned we've set aside some funds to issue refunds to spring term withdrawals. These are for students who withdrew due to coronavirus, but if it's due to the change in delivery of instruction. And for those refunds. Beneath that, though, is where one of the largest changes has occurred to what I'm presenting here is we have been hearing relatively reliably, I believe, that that a 10% reduction in our state appropriations is possible. The state pays us, the full amount that we had budgeted for this current year was 78 million, and they pay us in 10 payments. And my understanding is that they've done this in the past where they simply don't make one of the payments if they choose to do this. So if that were to occur this current year, that 10% reduction is 7.8 million. The other significant change on this list is the cost of PPE. A month ago, I had this at about $1 million, but now as we're looking to try to open everything up, I've increased this to about 4 million. It is what we have out in purchase orders at the moment for PPE. So that's what brings us to 19.6 million impact to this current year. As is true for most of this, I mean, for us, this is more of a revenue event than an expenditure event. So 11.8 million of this is in a revenue loss. If we could go to the next slide. What I try to do on this slide is now show what our plans are to address this impact. So you see the 19.6 million at the top. I have broken that into two pieces. The two pieces that are in yellow, first are the pieces of the portions of the 19.6 that I believe will be eligible to cover with the CARES Act institutional funds. So from the CARES Act, we've received a total of about 30 million. Half of that is going directly to students and financial grants. So that half I'm not showing here at all because it's going directly to students. It's the other half, the 15.3 million in CARES Act institutional funds. And so out of the 19.6, I believe 10.1 million should be eligible to be paid for with these CARES Act institutional funds. And so that could come out of that, and that would leave 5.2 million there. But again, from the 19.6, again, like I said, I kind of broke it into its two buckets. 9.5 of that, I do not believe would be eligible to be covered by the CARES Act. So that would, it's the 9.5 million that would be the more direct impact to our operating budget. So the two actions that we've already taken there, we mentioned this at the last board meeting, is we've already instituted a hiring freeze and a budget freeze of non-personnel expenses. So those two actions are what we are doing to try to offset as much of this $9.5 million impact as possible. So there currently I'm estimating 7.6 million from those two actions, which does still leave a gap to be covered of 1.9 million, almost 2 million shortfall of the impact of this on this year's finances. But as a, yes.
Before you go on, so board, we just don't know yet about the state reduction. We keep hearing that they're going to do that, but we had a discussion earlier this week. The later we go, the less likely that's going to happen. But so we've been told that there possibly could be a 10% cut now, then a 10% cut in the fall. So the numbers that you're seeing it just depends. So, but regardless, you can see there that we would be borrowing money out of the reserve to finish this year, but we still stay at 16%. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Yes, and actually we would, I would still have us forecasted to end the year at 17% above our goal of 16%. So that's where, so on the slide, like I said, at the top, the 19.6 million being the impact, the yellow is sort of how I've split that impact into eligible to be paid for with the CARES Act versus ineligible. But then what's in green is what I'm trying to show we have still available in resources at the end of this year. Remaining stimulus funds of 5.2 million, and then we would still have cash reserves of 3.8 million above that 16% goal. Right. So that is where we would think our best guess at this point is we would end this summer at. Then if we could go to the next slide. Looking into next year, as I mentioned, so far for us, this is a revenue event much more than an expenditure event. So the top line of this is fall enrollment. So right now, we are estimating a 15% decline in fall enrollment. If you look at the report that compares us to last year at the same number of days into registration, that's about where that report is showing us currently. But a 15% decline is almost a $22 million revenue loss. So that is the big chunk of impact being estimated for next year. Then, of course, on top of that, right, you see the 10% reduction in state appropriation listed again. It is listed twice because, as Dr. Head just mentioned, if they reduce us this year, so if they send us this year 70 million instead of 78, next year they're not going to send us 78. They're still only going to send us 70. So it's really that reduction of 7.8 million twice this year and then again next year. So that's why you see that a second time, because it really does hit us twice. So between those two things, that's where at the bottom you see just in next year alone, almost a $30 million revenue loss. And then there is still some additional expenses that I'm including as well for online instruction, PPE, for example. So that puts us at a $34 million impact on next year. If we could go to the next slide. So trying to estimate where we could end next year at is if we have this impact of 34 million, if you remember first I showed what I was estimating we would have ending this year, which is the 5.2 million in CARES Act funds and the 3.8 million in cash reserves above the 16% goal. So we do have those sources. Clearly that's not enough to cover the 34. So the other actions that we are looking at taking right now is continuing the hiring freeze. So doing that hiring freeze for the full year, I'm currently estimating at 8.7 million. Then also doing basically an across the board 5% budget reduction. So each president, each vice chancellor would need to make a 5% cut to their area's budget. That would cut about 14 million off of our baseline expenditure budget. So the combination of all of these resources gets us to just shy of 32 million, which is pretty close to the 34 million, but not quite there, right? So there's still a shortfall in next year of about 2.3 million, which is about 0.6% of cash reserves. And that would be, if that is what occurs next year, that would be a drawdown of cash reserves below that 16% goal that we have.
Jennifer, it's Mike Stoma. On that 5% budget reduction, when will you know the details of that? When will the vice chancellors have their details in on when and where they're going to cut?
So they would have to balance all of their budgets. I think the date is towards the end of June. It was second or third week of June that we'd all have to have our budgets turned in, and then we put that budget detail together for the board, because I still have a schedule for the board to adopt next year's budget in mid-August.
And Steve, this is something we're going to review again on the 28th. Is that correct?
Yes. So you mentioned the vice chancellors, but it's also the president. So we're leaving that with them with a couple of caveats. One is they cannot reduce instruction, right? Instruction is not being reduced. So we think we can do that. And the reason we want to meet in May is we'll have a better grip on the enrollments, the way that trends are going. And the reality is we're probably not going to know until mid to late June the way the trends are on the enrollment. But that's the key to this. The other part we're going to talk about on the 28th is all the different scenarios, because we've got about 6 or 7 of them. What you're seeing here is the worst case scenario minus a hurricane, and we have another scenario worked in for that. If we had another $50 million hit on a hurricane or the flood, then that's another $7.5 million that we would be out of pocket. So we've got another scenario on that. So we're going to go through all those though on the next meeting. So right now, So we'll get through this fiscal year in good shape. And then the following year, you start to see it. It's the year after that, FY22, is where we start seeing problems that we're going to talk about in the May 28th meeting. If this continues, that's where we see the challenges.
Say, Mr. Chairman, Mike Sullivan.
Go ahead.
Thank you. A couple of questions, if I may, Steve, Jennifer.
Sure.
First of all, good information, easy to read, easy to understand, and thank you for running these different scenarios for us. I would like to focus just for a second, if I could, on hiring freeze. I look at the hiring freeze line item, $8.7 million. And then I look back in our consent agenda, and item 8, we voted on new contracts. Are new contracts and new hires the same in that respect? And if so, are we hiring up right now to only have to look at potentially doing something in the future? Would you kind of walk through us, educate me on that, please?
Sure. Anybody that was already under contract, we're continuing. Anybody that was already working, we're continuing. We have a number of open positions that were not, unless they're essential. And those all come up through HR, and Mario reviews them, and I review them. It comes from the president. So we are freezing most new hires and replacement positions. In other words, if somebody leaves, we're not replacing them unless it's considered critical. And we have a couple of critical positions, police officers, for example, some IT slots. Most of the other positions, it just depends. In some of the programs, we know we need additional faculty, so we've given an okay on that. It just depends right now on the circumstances and what the request is. We have about, right now, we have about $11 million in unfilled positions, so that's how we're looking at saving money. We don't want to be adding any new people right now while we're not sure what's going to happen, for the reasons that Trustee Pierce and some of the rest of you talked about before. Does that help?
It does, yes, sir. So these multi-year contracts that we voted on, I'm scanning right now on my other computer. Those were all existing positions.
Yes.
It's just a contractual renewal.
Right, that is correct.
Okay. Okay. Could you give me an example of what well, no, never mind. Start say hiring freeze would be. That could be almost anything. That. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Mr. Chancellor, Mike Stone again. I want to thank you and Jennifer for providing the detail here. I certainly look forward to the May 28th session. I want to apologize to the president. I certainly didn't mean to overlook you. You folks are the business managers of this college system as far as I'm concerned. And I think putting instruction first, see, if I look at it from a business perspective, I look at the value chain of the business, in which key to this value chain is instruction. That's what we're in to do. We're into delivering educational services. So indeed, if that is placed first, and then you look at what you need to support those educational services, and you do kind of a top-down, bottoms-up analysis, and you'll find that 5% hopefully near the bottom. So I encourage you to consider that approach if you're not already using it, and I look forward to the report on the 28th. And again, I want to thank the presidents and everyone, and Jennifer, certainly your team, and you and your team for the work you've done here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You know, Jennifer, and again, folks accuse me of giving too many compliments, but I think compliments are appropriate. And I will reiterate that I got a call from Standard & Poor's, one of my friends. He thought I knew already that we were still AAA, even though he thought nobody would be AAA in an educational institution. And he called your name out specifically. I'm going to tell you who he is. So you're doing a great job under the great leadership of Steve Head, and thank you for a job well done.
Thank you. Yes, so that actually reminds me on the S&P rating. Yes, we got reaffirmed AAA. We did that in preparation for doing a refinancing. We had been planning on doing the refinancing before all of this hit. And I mean, we talked it over with our financial advisor and the underwriter to see what the markets were like to see if we could still do it. And they thought we could. And sure enough, we were reaffirmed the AAA rating. And yesterday, we refinanced bonds for savings. We got a 2.5% interest rate, and on a present value basis, so over the whole life of the bonds, we saved $6 million on that refinancing.
That's outstanding. And again, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you can proceed. Yeah.
So that concludes my report for the financial impact. So you could see the first two slides was really where we were this year. And then you can also look at the financial statements provided in the agenda. But then, of course, I went further and showed what we're seeing so far for next year.
So for the board on May the 28th, we have different scenarios, so you can see exactly what will happen if worst case scenario and where we have to make decisions. I think you'll be able to see that pretty clearly. We just have certain benchmarks. And one of those, again, the big one's going to be the fall enrollment. After that, if that doesn't look the way we would like for it to look, we are going to have to make some tough decisions here. So,
Jennifer, this is Linda Good. I have to ask the question that I ask at every board meeting. Have we got any more money out of FEMA for Hurricane Harvey?
No, we have not.
Wow. We think we will.
Still working it, I'll keep working it, but no, we have not received any more yet.
Good girl. Good job.
Yeah.
Thank you. They're hoping to wear you out.
yeah.
Well, FEMA is a slow payer. I wish I could pay my bills that way.
Yeah. Well, that puts it mildly.
Try to do that, Linda, periodically, most of the times. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that concludes our part. Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any suggested future agenda items? If not, I declare this meeting adjourned, and thank you all for participating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank everyone.
Thank you.
All righty. All righty.
Good job.
Hi, guys.
Excellent.
Well done.